I think once you've experienced God yourself, it's so much easier to be able to express that, because I know the things I've been forgiven for, those that have not been wiped away from my memory. I know the things I've been forgiven for. So, Jesus said, was it Jesus who said, those who've done a lot and received a lot of forgiveness are really grateful. they really know what it is to be forgiven, and I think there's a sense where the more we really appreciate the forgiveness we've received, it is easier then to realize that people are just like us. They may have had other life experiences that may have contributed to things they've done which may be different from us, but bottom line is we're all capable of everything. And therefore God treats us in the same way, because he doesn't measure sin. Sin to him is lost identity. Sin to people is usually behaviors, things they do. Well, that's not the way God looks at it. God is looking at the fact that we don't know who we are. We've lost our identity as sons and are acting out a lost identity, which is potentially brokenness. And therefore we hurt each other out of our own woundedness and brokenness. Now, once you really realize that, then it makes no sense not to forgive. Because unforgiveness, someone said it's like poison, drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. And all unforgiveness does is tie you to the event and the person who did something. And you're dragging that around with you like a heavy weight and burden, which is why unforgiveness is such a hard thing, which can have effects, it's toxic to the body and the soul. And people it's like dragging, they used to put prisoners with a ball and chain around their feet, didn't they? So they couldn't run very far or run very fast and escape. And unforgiveness is like that. It's dragging around such a heavy weight. Because Jesus said, if you don't forgive, you can't be forgiven. Now, he wasn't talking about that God hasn't forgiven you. It's just basically saying, look, you won't know forgiveness if you don't give forgiveness. It is something that once you've received will be so, well, why could you do nothing else? But some people don't. They just hold on to it, and it becomes a torture to them, and they end up being toxic, and they end up being resentful and bitter and angry and depressed, because they carry around this weight of what happened to them without letting it go and letting him carry it all. Didn't he ask us to cast all our burdens onto him so he can remove them all from us? He can't remove it if we keep hold of them. And that's the issue with forgiveness. If you don't forgive from your heart, just choosing to forgive someone, and the proof of that is that you do want the best for them, then you're going to be toxic. You will be toxic in relationship, and you will have toxicity within, and your soul will be poisoned. And you won't find joy and peace in life with living with unforgiveness and treating people like enemies. And a lot of people want people to say sorry before they forgive them. And that isn't what God did for us. Jesus, when he said on the cross, Father, forgive them, none of them had said sorry. But he still asked the Father to forgive them because he'd already forgiven them himself. And it was a way of verbalizing and making a huge statement about what forgiveness is. And it isn't based on someone being sorry. And a lot of people want someone to own up and be sorry and to admit they were wrong. Then they'll forgive them. And all the time they're holding on to all that. They're being poisoned. And then it becomes even harder then to choose to forgive when you're bitter and resentful and poisoned and toxic on the inside. It's like, no, just forgive. Jesus tells a story, doesn't he, of the guy who basically owed the I think it was like the gross national product of Israel, to the sort of the master, and couldn't obviously pay it back, and the master forgave him, and then the guy wouldn't forgive a person who owed him one day's wage, and he was like, how could you not forgive having received that forgiveness? Because he was bitter in his heart, and he chose to operate out of not mercy, and ended up in the description of being tortured on the inside, which is really what happens. You give yourself over to those feelings of bitterness and resentment and anger, and it tortures you and poisons you. And it's and even people can be physically ill and sick and twisted, arthritis and all sorts of stuff as a result of unforgiveness. So it's such power in love and unforgiveness, which is the heart of the good news. It's so wonderful that while we were in a lost state, he came and found us, and made us alive together with him. He didn't wait for us to sort of get to the point where, oh, okay, maybe I need to make amends here and try and put it all right and all this stuff. No, he found us at our worst, lost, alienated, and reconciled us. Hi, everyone. We're starting a Patreon page, patreon.com/freedomarc. And we would like to invite you to partner with us in taking the message of God's unconditional love, limitless grace, triumphant mercy to a bigger global audience.